Hey, car lovers! The 1950s was a golden era for automotive design. Tail fins, chrome, and sleek curves were all the rage. But for every classic beauty that emerged, there were a few head-scratchers that left people asking, what were they thinking? Today, we're taking a trip down memory lane to look at 10 goofy cars from the 1950s that nobody's begging to bring back. Let's dive in. Kicking off our list is the quirky Nash Metropolitan, a car that looks straight out of a cartoon strip. With its pint-sized frame, round headlights, and bubble-like design, it often seemed more like a toy than an actual vehicle designed for the road. The Metropolitan was conceived as a compact city car, ideal for navigating tight urban spaces and squeezing into small parking spots. However, its oddball proportions and cutesy, almost whimsical styling made it more of a novelty than a practical everyday driver. For starters, the car's size alone made it stand out, and not always in a good way. At a time when most American cars were growing larger and more powerful, the Metropolitan seemed like a relic from another world. It was tiny, almost comically so, with dimensions that made it appear vulnerable next to the hulking sedans and muscle cars of the 1950s and 1960s. It looked like it could be scooped up and carried away, more at home in a toy store than on a bustling city street. And then there were those proportions. With its bulbous body, tiny tires, and round headlights, the Metropolitan's overall look was more funny than functional. The front end, in particular, resembled the face of a cartoon character, complete with wide-eyed headlights that looked like they could blink at any moment. The grille was small and almost bashful, and the roofline sloped down in a way that made the car look almost squashed. It was cute, sure, but it was a cutesiness that didn't quite resonate with the broader car-buying public, especially those who wanted their vehicles to have a bit more presence on the road. Despite its charm, the Nash Metropolitan was far from practical. Its compact size meant that interior space was minimal, and comfort often took a back seat. While it could fit two adults reasonably well, trying to squeeze in any luggage or extra passengers was a challenge. It was also woefully underpowered, with its tiny engine struggling to keep up with even moderate speeds. On highways, it felt out of its depth, more suited to puttering around town than handling long-distance drives. While city drivers might have appreciated its maneuverability, the car's limitations became painfully clear on open roads. But let's give credit where credit is due. The Metropolitan had its fans, and its quirky design wasn't without appeal. For those who embraced its oddity, the car had a certain retro charm that was undeniably unique. In a sea of big, blocky sedans, the Metropolitan's playful design offered something different, and that uniqueness has given it a cult following among collectors and enthusiasts today. But even among its admirers, there's no denying that the car's cartoonish look and impracticality earned it a place on lists of the most peculiar cars ever built. At the end of the day, the Nash Metropolitan is a car that epitomizes the idea of form over function. It may have been designed with good intentions, an economical, compact city car, but its goofy appearance and lack of practicality kept it from being taken seriously by many drivers. It's the kind of car that makes you smile when you see it, but not necessarily a car you'd want to rely on for your daily commute. With its toy-like design and out-of-place proportions, the Metropolitan remains one of the most memorable and awkward cars of its time. Next on our list is the King Midget, a car that blurred the line between an actual vehicle and something you'd expect to see at a carnival. The King Midget, especially its Model 3 variant, was an attempt to create the ultimate budget-friendly car, but instead of revolutionizing affordable transportation, it ended up resembling a glorified go-kart that somehow earned the right to share the road with full-sized automobiles. At first glance, the King Midget's appearance is downright peculiar. The car was incredibly small, barely looking like something that belonged on public highways. Its design was an odd combination of a high roofline and a narrow, boxy body, which gave it a toy-like, almost DIY appearance. Imagine a child drawing a car with a ruler, straight, basic lines with no frills or curves. And that's essentially what the King Midget ended up looking like. It had the dimensions of a go-kart, but with the ambition to be a real car, resulting in a design that was as awkward as it was quirky. One of the main selling points of the King Midget was its price. The Model 3 was designed to be the ultimate budget car, and it was cheap, really cheap. If you were looking for the absolute bare minimum in terms of transportation, the King Midget was your answer. It was marketed as a car that anyone could afford, and to its credit, it was accessible. However, the trade-off for that low price tag was obvious from the moment you sat behind the wheel. Power was not the King Midget's strong suit, if you can even call it a suit. Under the hood, if you could call it that, the Model 3 had a minuscule, underpowered engine that struggled to get you anywhere in a hurry. It was painfully slow, with an engine better suited for a lawnmower than an actual car. The top speed wasn't just low, it was embarrassing. And while that might have been fine for puttering around quiet neighborhoods, taking the King Midget on a highway felt more like a test of bravery than a typical driving experience. The lack of power wasn't the only issue. The King Midget didn't inspire confidence in any sense of the word. Its flimsy, lightweight build and tiny size made it feel more like you were riding in a toy than in an actual vehicle. On the road, it didn't exactly command respect from other drivers, and being dwarfed by everything around you only added to the unease. For many, the experience of driving a King Midget was less about convenience and more about sheer novelty. But despite all of this, the King Midget holds a strange, almost charming place in automotive history. It's the kind of oddball vehicle that's so weird and underwhelming that it's hard not to appreciate it for what it is: an ambitious, if misguided attempt to provide the masses with the cheapest possible form of transportation. While the King Midget certainly didn't set any benchmarks for performance or design, it did carve out a niche for itself as a curiosity, an experiment in minimalism taken to the extreme. Today, the King Midget is remembered as an automotive oddity, more go-kart than car, but with its own kind of quirky charm. It may not have left a lasting legacy in terms of innovation or style, but it did earn a place in the hearts of collectors who appreciate its unusual backstory. In the grand scheme of things, the King Midget is a reminder that sometimes cheaper isn't always better, especially when it comes to cars. While it might bring a smile to your face now, it's certainly not a vehicle anyone's clamoring to bring back to the road. All right, let's kick things off with one of the strangest, most peculiar cars ever to grace the roads: the Schmidt KR200. Now, if you've never heard of it, buckle up, because this tiny, three-wheeled microcar is nothing short of bizarre. Designed by the same German company that made aircraft during World War II, the KR200 looks less like a car and more like a leftover airplane cockpit that someone decided to slap wheels onto. That's right, this vehicle quite literally looks like it was meant to fly rather than drive. Just picture it: a bubble-shaped canopy curving over the top like a glass dome that lifts up so you can step in. It's like something out of a science fiction movie, or maybe even a cartoon. The design alone is enough to make you do a double take. And inside, you've got tandem seating, meaning you and your passenger don't sit side by side, but one behind the other, much like you would in a fighter plane. It's hard to imagine this being practical for daily use, but practicality wasn't exactly the KR200's strong suit. Now, under the hood, if you can even call it that, you have a single-cylinder engine. Yes, just one cylinder, producing a whopping 10 horsepower. To put that in perspective, the KR200 had about as much power as a decent lawnmower today. This engine was actually borrowed from motorcycles, which might explain why this thing struggled to keep up with even the slowest of cars on the road. Going uphill in this car? Let's just say it wasn't an experience for the impatient. You weren't going anywhere fast, that's for sure. But here's where it gets really interesting, or terrifying depending on your perspective. The KR200 had only 3 wheels, 2 up front and 1 in the back. And if you know anything about three-wheeled vehicles, you know they have a bit of a reputation for being, well, unstable. Take a turn too sharply in this thing, and you were flirting with disaster. Tipping over was a very real concern, and the car's narrow, top-heavy design didn't do much to ease that fear. It was more like balancing on a tricycle than driving a car, which meant every drive required a little extra care and a lot of nerve. Visually, the KR200 was just as strange as it was functionally. Its narrow body, combined with that high curved canopy, gave it the appearance of a rolling fishbowl. and with the driver and passenger sitting one behind the other. It just didn't look like any car you've ever seen. In fact, if you saw one on the road today, you might wonder if you'd stumbled into some kind of retro-futuristic time warp. But back in the 1950s in post-war Europe, this oddball design made a bit more sense. People needed cheap, efficient transportation, and they weren't as concerned with looks. The KR200 ticked those boxes. It was economical, light, and small. But man, it wasn't going to win any beauty contests. Now you might be thinking, wasn't this thing just a total flop? And surprisingly, it wasn't. The KR200 found a unique market. People appreciated its weirdness, its quirkiness, and its practicality, if you could look past its limitations. It was inexpensive to buy, didn't use much fuel, and could get you from point A to point B, albeit at a leisurely pace. In that post-war era, practicality often won out over aesthetics, and the Schmidt KR200 managed to sell in decent numbers for a microcar. However, once you get behind the wheel, it's clear why this car is more of a novelty than a serious contender in automotive history. Driving the KR200 was nothing short of an adventure. If not for the driving experience, then for the sheer oddity of it all. With just 3 wheels, you were always on edge, hoping you didn't tip over around a corner. Its lack of power meant you weren't passing anyone on the highway, and heaven forbid you needed to get anywhere in a hurry. And let's not forget, when you're inside, surrounded by glass and sitting in tandem, you feel more exposed than you would in any modern vehicle. It's an odd sensation, almost like you're not in a car, but in a transparent bubble hurtling down the road. But here's the thing, despite all its flaws, despite its awkward looks and less than stellar performance, there's a kind of charm to the Schmidt KR200. It's one of those cars that just makes you smile because it's so unapologetically unique. In a world where most cars start to look the same, the KR200 stands out like a neon sign. It's quirky, it's different, and for some people, that's enough. There's a reason it's become a cult classic among collectors. People aren't drawn to it because it was a great car. They're drawn to it because it's so weird and so unmistakably one of a kind. So would you want to drive one today? Probably not. While it may be a fun piece of automotive history and certainly a conversation starter, the KR200 isn't exactly practical by modern standards. The Crosley Hot Shot was envisioned as an affordable sports car for the everyday driver, a vehicle that could deliver a thrill on a budget. However, its execution fell far short of that lofty goal, leaving much to be desired both in terms of design and performance. At first glance, the Hot Shot resembled more of a toy roadster than a serious sports car. Its tiny wheels and low-slung, simplistic body gave it a goofy, almost unfinished appearance, as if it were a prototype that had somehow made its way to production without final approval. The car's compact size and peculiar proportions only added to its toy-like aesthetic, making it difficult to take seriously as a contender in the sports car market. The Hot Shot's design, while unique, didn't exude the sleekness or excitement one might expect from a vehicle claiming to be sporty. Instead, the small, boxy body, combined with its narrow wheelbase and minimalist features, made it look awkward and unrefined. The car seemed more like an oversized go-kart than a legitimate roadster, with none of the aggressive lines or curves that typically define performance cars. Its flat, featureless front end and simple, utilitarian rear offered little in the way of visual appeal. For a car that was supposed to stir the emotions and excitement of the open road, the Crosley Hot Shot left most observers underwhelmed, its uninspiring design a major stumbling block. When it came to performance, the Hot Shot struggled even more to live up to its name. Powered by a modest engine, it produced just enough power to qualify it as a vehicle, but certainly not enough to earn it a reputation as a sports car. With a mere 26 horsepower, the Hot Shot was underpowered by any standard, let alone those of the sports car world. It may have been able to putter around town, but on the open road, it felt sluggish and struggled to reach speeds that could justify its sporty aspirations. Acceleration was tepid, and the handling was more suited for casual drives rather than anything resembling spirited performance. Despite its shortcomings, the Crosley Hot Shot did manage to carve out a niche for itself among a small group of enthusiasts. Its affordability was a key selling point. This was a car designed for those who wanted something sporty without the high price tag of a European roadster. For some, its quirky, unpolished design was part of its charm, a sort of underdog quality that made it endearing to a niche audience. The Hot Shot also had a degree of novelty value. As one of the few American-made compact sports cars of its time, it stood out, if only for its unusual approach to design and performance. However, for the vast majority of car buyers and enthusiasts, the Crosley Hot Shot was more of a curiosity than a contender. Its odd proportions, lack of power, and strange overall aesthetic made it difficult to take seriously in a market dominated by more capable and stylish vehicles. The Hot Shot may have had potential in concept, but in execution, it fell flat. It wasn't just the design that left people scratching their heads. The car's underwhelming performance and bare-bones features made it difficult to justify as anything more than a novelty. In retrospect, the Crosley Hot Shot stands as a reminder of the challenges in balancing affordability with performance and style. While it succeeded in offering a low-cost option for those seeking a sports car experience, it failed to deliver in almost every other respect. Its toy-like appearance, combined with its lackluster performance, relegated it to the fringes of automotive history. While it may have had its moment in the sun, the Crosley Hot Shot ultimately missed the mark, unable to live up to the expectations of what a true sports car should be. Let's talk about the Fiat 600 Multipla, a car that was undeniably revolutionary in its concept, but left much to be desired in terms of design. When it was introduced, the Multipla was one of the first true minivans, a vehicle ahead of its time in terms of functionality and practicality. It offered a compact yet spacious solution for families, delivering versatility and impressive seating for up to 6 passengers in a relatively small footprint. For post-war Europe, where smaller, more economical cars were in demand, the Multipla seemed like an ideal answer. However, where the car excelled in utility, it fell dramatically short in aesthetic appeal, and it quickly earned a reputation for being one of the oddest-looking vehicles on the road. At first glance, the Fiat 600 Multipla didn't exactly scream elegance or sophistication. Instead, it looked like a squash bug, a vehicle with an unusual, almost cartoonish appearance that left many scratching their heads. The car's bulbous shape was one of its most defining features, rounded, pudgy, and entirely ungraceful. The short front end, with its stubby nose and lack of a pronounced hood, gave the car a peculiar, top-heavy look, as if someone had flattened it from the front. This exaggerated front contrasted sharply with the high roofline that stretched across the length of the vehicle, making it look more like a small bus than a minivan. And while that higher roof did wonders for interior space, from the outside, it only emphasized the car's strange, unbalanced proportions. One of the most striking aspects of the Multipla's design was its oversized windows, which wrapped around the car and gave it an almost aquarium-like appearance. Combined with the vehicle's small wheels and bulbous body, these large windows created the impression that you were looking at a child's toy blown up to life-size proportions. While this may have added visibility for drivers, it didn't do much for the Multipla's overall visual appeal. In fact, it almost seemed as though the designers were more focused on practicality and interior space than on ensuring the car looked attractive. The result was a vehicle that, while functional, had little in the way of curb appeal. The front of the Multipla also left much to be desired. The car's face, if you could call it that, was rather featureless, with a tiny, narrow grille and headlights that appeared too small for the overall size of the front end. It lacked the kind of stylish or aggressive front-end design that many other vehicles of the era boasted. Instead, the Multipla looked like a vehicle designed to blend in, except ironically, its odd proportions made it stand out, but not in a good way. There was nothing sleek or streamlined about it, and its overall appearance was more reminiscent of a utility vehicle than a stylish family car. Another issue with the Fiat 600 Multipla was its proportions. The car's relatively long passenger area, combined with the short front, made it look unbalanced and awkward. The high roofline, which was certainly practical for providing more headroom inside, only added to the car's ungainly, top-heavy appearance. In short, the Multipla looked more like a mobile box than an actual vehicle, And while it may have functioned well as a family car, it certainly didn't win any points for style. Now let's be clear, the Multipla wasn't without its merits. For its time, it was a clever and innovative solution for families who needed more space but didn't want to drive a much larger vehicle. Its ability to seat 6 passengers in such a compact form was truly groundbreaking, and it pioneered the concept of the minivan well before that became a mainstream vehicle category. But despite its practicality, there's no denying that its aesthetics were, to put it kindly, lacking. The odd, bloated design might have had a certain charm for some, but for most, it was a visual disaster. The Fiat 600 Multipla is a perfect example of a car that was ahead of its time in concept but fell flat in execution. It was a trailblazer in terms of functionality, setting the stage for future minivans and compact family vehicles. But where it shined in practicality, it completely missed the mark in design. Its quirky, bug-like appearance and awkward proportions earned it a place in automotive history, not as a beloved classic, but as one of the strangest, goofiest-looking cars to ever hit the road. In the end, while the Multipla deserves respect for its innovative approach to family transportation, its appearance guarantees it a spot on any list of the oddest, most awkward cars ever produced. It's a reminder that even when a car is ahead of its time in one area, poor design choices can make it more of a novelty than a lasting success. Today, the Fiat 600 Multipla is remembered less for its forward-thinking practicality and more for its offbeat, almost toy-like looks, a car that's as fascinating as it is funny to behold. The Renault Doofen was initially introduced with the promise of being a practical, economical car for the masses. It aimed to capture the growing post-war demand for compact vehicles that were easy to drive and affordable to maintain. However, while the concept seemed solid on paper, the execution left much to be desired, both in terms of design and performance. What Renault delivered was a car that, while certainly compact, appeared more like a bubble on wheels than a functional mode of transportation. Its overly rounded shape, tiny wheels, and soft curves gave it a cartoonish, almost toy-like appearance, making it difficult for many to take it seriously as a practical vehicle. The Doofen's design didn't inspire confidence or evoke any sense of sophistication. Its sloping roofline and bulbous body gave the car a goofy, almost exaggerated look, which may have seemed charming to a niche group of buyers, but for the majority, it simply looked out of place on the roads. In a market where clean lines and bolder designs were becoming the norm, the Doofen's overly cute aesthetic stood in stark contrast, making it feel outdated even as it was being introduced. The tiny wheels in particular seemed mismatched with the rest of the car's proportions, further accentuating its awkward, bubble-like appearance. It may have been designed to be a practical city car, but its appearance didn't exactly exude confidence or capability. Beyond its visual shortcomings, the Doofen had deeper issues under the hood. While it may have been marketed as a practical small car, it was severely underpowered. The car's modest engine produced only about 32 horsepower, which was insufficient even by the standards of its time. The Doofen struggled to keep up with traffic, especially on highways, where it felt sluggish and unresponsive. Acceleration was frustratingly slow, and its top speed left much to be desired. For drivers who expected a peppy, nimble city car, the Doofen's performance was a disappointment, bordering on dangerous when trying to merge onto faster roads or overtake other vehicles. Reliability was another major flaw that tarnished the Doofen's reputation. Owners quickly discovered that the car was prone to frequent mechanical issues, and its durability was far from impressive. The Doofen had a reputation for being temperamental and fragile, with frequent breakdowns and mechanical failures becoming a common complaint among its owners. Its fragile build quality, combined with a lackluster engine, meant that many who purchased the car for its affordability ended up spending more on repairs and maintenance than they bargained for. For a car that was supposed to represent economical motoring, the Doofen ended up being a financial headache for many of its buyers. The Doofen's underwhelming performance and reliability issues only compounded its design flaws. While some may have initially been charmed by its quirky, round appearance, the car's lack of power and propensity for breakdowns quickly turned that initial curiosity into frustration. The soft curves that gave it a bubble-like aesthetic also translated into a driving experience that felt soft and unresponsive. The car wasn't built for speed, nor was it built to handle long distances with any degree of reliability, making it a poor choice for anyone looking for more than just a simple city commuter. In hindsight, the Renault Doofen is often remembered more for its failures than its successes. Despite its ambitions to be a practical, affordable small car, its overly cute design, combined with poor performance and reliability, ensured that it never achieved the widespread success Renault had hoped for. The Doofen serves as a reminder that while affordability and practicality are important, they need to be balanced with quality design and engineering. In the case of the Doofen, the balance was never struck, and the car remains a symbol of missed potential in automotive history. The Hudson Hornet Hollywood was introduced as a distinctive fastback variant of Hudson's renowned Hornet line, which had already gained acclaim for its performance and innovation in racing. The Hornet was celebrated for its robust engineering and competitive success on the track, but the Hollywood model aimed to bring a touch of sophistication and modernity to the brand's lineup with its unique fastback design. However, the Hollywood's attempt to blend speed with style resulted in a car that, while ambitious, ultimately missed the mark in terms of aesthetic appeal. At first glance, the Hornet Hollywood presented itself as a sleek and stylish vehicle, designed to capture the essence of modern automotive design trends of the time. Fastback models were becoming increasingly popular for their streamlined, aerodynamic profiles, which promised improved performance and a more refined appearance. The Hollywood was Hudson's answer to this trend, aiming to deliver a cutting-edge design that could rival the sleek lines of competitors' vehicles. Unfortunately, the final result was a car that looked more awkward and bloated than sleek and elegant. One of the Hollywood's most notable design features was its rounded roofline. Intended to create a smooth, flowing silhouette, this feature instead contributed to the car's overly bulbous appearance. The rounded roof, combined with the bulky rear end, gave the Hollywood a sense of mass and heaviness that clashed with the more streamlined designs of its contemporaries. Rather than achieving a sense of aerodynamic grace, the Hollywood's design seemed to exaggerate its bulk, making the car look less like a refined fastback and more like a cumbersome, oversized vehicle. The rear end of the Hollywood further exacerbated its design flaws. The pronounced bulkiness of the rear was at odds with the smoother lines that the fastback design aimed to achieve. Instead of blending seamlessly with the rest of the car's body, the rear end jutted out in a way that disrupted the overall flow of the design. This heavy rear end, combined with the rounded roofline, made the Hollywood appear less streamlined and more awkwardly proportioned. The design choices, which were intended to evoke a sense of speed and elegance, ended up making the Hollywood look clunky and out of place. In comparison to the more fluid and stylish designs emerging from other manufacturers, the Hornet Hollywood's appearance seemed outdated and out of touch. The car's proportions were notably off-kilter when placed alongside its sleek and elegant competitors, which were setting new standards in automotive design. The Hollywood's bulkiness and strange proportions rendered it less of a forward-thinking design and more of an oddity in an era that was increasingly favoring clean, aerodynamic lines. The contrast between the Hollywood's design and that of its rivals highlighted its shortcomings and made it seem like a relic of a bygone design era. Beyond its visual shortcomings, the Hollywood's design had practical implications for its performance. The added bulk and weight of the car's design impacted its handling and agility. While the Hornet was known for its solid performance, the Hollywood's heavier, more cumbersome build compromised its driving dynamics. The car's bulkiness affected its responsiveness and maneuverability, making it less nimble and less enjoyable to drive compared to more refined, lighter vehicles of the time. This disconnect between the car's racing heritage and its road-going performance only added to the perception that the Hollywood had fallen short of its design goals. Despite these issues, the Hudson Hornet Hollywood remains a significant part of automotive history. It represents an interesting chapter where ambitious design concepts were pursued with varying degrees of success. The Hollywood's attempt to innovate with its fastback profile and modern design elements reflects the spirit of experimentation that characterized the era. Although it did not achieve the sleek, sporty allure that Hudson had hoped for, The Hollywood stands as a reminder of the creative risks taken during a time of rapid change in automotive design. Its distinctive look, while not universally admired, contributes to its unique place in the history of automotive styling, showcasing both the ambition and the challenges faced by designers in their quest to push the boundaries of car design. The BMW Isetta 300 stands out as one of the most unusual and quirky automobiles ever produced, embodying a design that was as unconventional as it was innovative. Introduced in the 1950s, the Isetta was conceived as an ultra-compact city car, catering to the post-war need for affordable and practical transportation. However, its execution resulted in a vehicle that is as much a novelty as it is a mode of transport, making it an enduring icon of eccentric automotive design. From the moment you lay eyes on the Isetta 300, it's clear that this is not your typical car. Its bubble-like shape, with a rounded, almost cartoonish silhouette, immediately sets it apart from the more traditional vehicles of its time. The Isetta's design was a radical departure from the standard, boxy or streamlined shapes of the era, aiming instead to maximize interior space within a remarkably small footprint. The result was a car that looked more like a toy or a prop from a futuristic movie than a serious mode of transportation. One of the most striking features of the Isetta is its three-wheel configuration. While most cars of the period boasted four wheels for stability and balance, the Isetta's single front wheel and two rear wheels were intended to provide a compact and maneuverable solution for urban environments. This design choice was both practical and economical, but it also contributed to the car's unconventional appearance. The three-wheel setup made the Isetta look somewhat precarious, and its narrow stance accentuated its diminutive size. Adding to the Isetta's unique charm is its front door, which opens like a refrigerator door, swinging outwards to provide access to the cabin. This door design was a practical solution to the car's limited space, allowing for easy entry and exit in tight parking situations. However, it also gave the Isetta a quirky, almost comical appearance that further enhanced its novelty status. The door's mechanism was one of the Isetta's most memorable features, embodying the car's blend of practicality and eccentricity. Inside, the Isetta was designed to maximize space despite its tiny dimensions. The cabin, while cozy, was surprisingly functional, accommodating up to 3 passengers in a tight but efficient layout. The dashboard was minimalistic, reflecting the car's emphasis on simplicity and economy. Despite its compact size, the Isetta was engineered to be a practical solution for city driving, with its small engine and lightweight construction, making it an economical choice for urban commuters. However, despite its practicality in tight spaces, the Isetta 300's design limitations were apparent when it came to performance and versatility. Its small size and three-wheel configuration made it less stable on the open road, and its limited power output meant that it was not well suited for high-speed driving or long-distance journeys. While it excelled in maneuverability and ease of parking, it struggled to deliver the performance and comfort expected from more conventional vehicles. In many ways, the BMW Isetta 300 is more of a cultural curiosity than a serious vehicle. Its unique design and historical significance as an early attempt at ultra-compact transportation make it a fascinating example of automotive innovation. The Isetta's bubble-like shape and quirky features have cemented its place as a beloved oddball in the world of cars, capturing the imagination of enthusiasts and collectors alike. It's a vehicle that, while not practical for all purposes, represents a bold and creative approach to solving the challenges of post-war urban transportation. The infamous Ford Edsel, a name that has become synonymous with automotive failure and serves as a cautionary tale in the annals of car history. The Edsel was Ford's ambitious foray into creating a new line of cars that would set new standards in luxury, innovation, and design. Instead, it ended up as one of the most spectacular flops in automotive history, embodying a series of misjudgments that turned its launch into a textbook example of how not to introduce a new vehicle. The Ford Edsel was introduced to much fanfare in 1957 with the intention of filling a niche between Ford's mainstream models and its high-end Lincoln line. The goal was to create a car that would revolutionize the market with its advanced features and cutting-edge design. However, from the very beginning, the Edsel was plagued by a series of missteps that would eventually seal its fate. One of the most glaring issues was the Edsel's design, which was intended to be revolutionary, but instead became the subject of widespread derision. The most criticized feature was its grille, which many observers likened to a toilet seat. This design choice was not merely a matter of aesthetics, but a symbol of the disconnect between Ford's ambitious vision and consumer expectations. The grille, with its large, gaping opening and excessive chrome detailing, became emblematic of the car's overall design problems. It was part of a front end that looked overly complex and cluttered, failing to convey the sleek, refined luxury that Ford had hoped for. The Edsel's design issues extended beyond its grille. The car was characterized by its bulky, awkward body that seemed to lack coherence and balance. The excessive chrome trim, intended to exude luxury and sophistication, often appeared garish and overdone. The car's proportions were off, with an oddly shaped rear and a front end that seemed to overwhelm the rest of the vehicle. This combination of stylistic excesses resulted in a car that looked both cumbersome and outdated, failing to capture the sleek, modern aesthetic that was popular at the time. In addition to its problematic design, the Edsel faced significant practical issues that further contributed to its downfall. The car was priced higher than many of its competitors, positioning it as a premium product in a market that was becoming increasingly price-sensitive. This high price tag, coupled with the car's perceived lack of value and reliability, made it difficult for the Edsel to justify its cost. Consumers were not only put off by the car's odd appearance, but also by its reputation for being unreliable. Production and quality control problems exacerbated these issues, leading to a series of mechanical failures and recalls that tarnished the Edsel's reputation. The marketing and launch of the Edsel were also fraught with difficulties. The car was introduced with a great deal of hype and expectation, but when it failed to live up to the promises made, it became a target for criticism. The media and public alike seized on the Edsel's design flaws and performance issues, turning it into a symbol of corporate overreach and misjudgment. The Edsel's poor sales performance was a direct result of these problems, and the car quickly became a symbol of failure in the automotive industry. In retrospect, the Ford Edsel is often remembered not for its intended role as a symbol of innovation, but for its role as a cautionary tale about the pitfalls of overambitious product development. Its story serves as a reminder of the importance of aligning innovation with consumer expectations and the risks inherent in pushing too far beyond established boundaries without a clear understanding of market needs. While the Edsel may have failed in its quest for automotive greatness, its legacy endures as a memorable and instructive chapter in the history of car design and marketing. Ladies and gentlemen, today we take a journey back in time to explore one of the automotive industry's most intriguing examples of budget-conscious engineering, the Studebaker Scotsman. Launched in the early 1950s, the Scotsman was designed with a singular purpose: to provide a cost-effective means of transportation during a period of economic uncertainty. However, while its intent was noble, its execution offers a fascinating study in the balance between functionality and appeal. The Studebaker Scotsman emerged at a time when post-war America was experiencing a surge in automobile ownership. As families sought reliable, affordable vehicles, manufacturers were under pressure to deliver cars that met these demands without breaking the bank. Enter the Scotsman, a model that promised to offer just that. Yet from its very conception, the Scotsman was designed to be as economically viable as it was stripped down, resulting in a car that stood out for all the wrong reasons. When you first lay eyes on the Scotsman, its design leaves an indelible impression. Unlike many of its contemporaries, which boasted sleek lines and stylish flourishes, the Scotsman embraced a decidedly utilitarian aesthetic. Its body was characterized by stark, boxy lines and flat surfaces that conveyed a sense of sheer practicality rather than elegance. This lack of adornment was intentional. By eschewing chrome trim and decorative elements, Studebaker aimed to keep production costs low. The result, however, was a vehicle that looked more like a delivery truck than a passenger car. This design philosophy extended beyond the exterior and into the interior of the Scotsman. Inside, you would find a cabin that prioritized function over form. The dashboard was minimalistic, featuring only the most essential gauges and controls. The seats were simple, upholstered in basic fabrics without any of the plush comfort typically associated with the era's vehicles. While these choices were made to reduce costs, they also contributed to a driving experience that was decidedly plain and uninspired. The Scotsman's design was not merely a matter of aesthetics, it had practical implications as well. The car's boxy shape and lack of aerodynamic refinement meant that it did not excel in terms of performance or fuel efficiency compared to more modern designs. Its driving dynamics reflected its no-frills approach, offering a ride that was functional but lacking in finesse. For many, the Scotsman's appearance and performance were a stark reminder of its budget origins, reinforcing the idea that affordability often comes at the expense of style and comfort. Despite these limitations, the Scotsman did succeed in fulfilling its primary objective. It was an affordable vehicle that offered basic transportation for those who needed it. It provided a means for people to get from point A to point B without the burden of high costs. For some buyers, this practicality was enough to justify the car's shortcomings. However, it is important to recognize that while the Scotsman met its functional goals, it struggled to capture the imagination or enthusiasm of the broader public. In retrospect, the Studebaker Scotsman stands as a fascinating case study in automotive history. It represents a moment when manufacturers had to make tough decisions about how to balance cost with consumer expectations. The car's design, though undeniably functional, highlights the challenges of creating a vehicle that meets economic constraints while still appealing to buyers. Its legacy is a reminder of the difficult trade-offs that companies often face when trying to cater to a budget-conscious market. Ultimately, the Scotsman's story is one of practicality and perseverance. While it may not have been the most glamorous or desirable car of its time, it served its purpose as a budget-friendly option for many. As we reflect on the history of automotive design, the Studebaker Scotsman remains an important chapter, a testament to the ingenuity and challenges of designing cars that balance cost with functionality. And there you have it, 10 goofy cars from the 1950s that are best left in the past. While the decade gave us some timeless classics, these models prove that even the 1950s had its share of design disasters. Which one do you think is the goofiest? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more automotive history and epic car fails.